I can't emphasize enough the importance of evangelism.
Amen.
That's why we are here. It's that simple. We are here to give the three angels messages to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people.
Amen.
It's that simple. And again, there is nothing more delightful. There is nothing more delightful in the world than for me when I get these cards back in the mail. It's delightful. Or when we get phone calls from people and they're saying, boy, this is amazing stuff. Thank you for sending it to me. You know, there is nothing more exciting and enriching. Nothing. And God knows that. And that's why He encourages us to share. So, and there's so many different ways. You know, I'm sure all of us, I know I have. I have rang doorbells and I have knocked on doors and I have had people, you know, use explicative deleteds. But I have them do that in the mail too. I mean, you know, but it's a lot easier. And I'm really glad that Bud has been willing to do this today and share some stories, testimonies, experiences that he and Barb have had. Last but not least, he told me at lunchtime when I asked him to do it to start this afternoon, he promised me he wouldn't talk more than an hour. All right, Bud, it's all yours.
Well, you know, Barbara told me, she said, well, if he told you to come up and talk, you might as well get on your Apple box. So, anyway, my Apple box is evangelism. People, I just get excited. I can't help myself. But, you know, the only difference between passing out the books and passing out this brochure is the fact we don't get quite so many ugly letters back on the brochure as we got back on the books.
That's true.
And Bill and I were discussing that. But you know what? We really kind of miss them. If your life isn't threatened at least once a week, you're not getting a job. And that does happen. That really does happen. We mass mailed a town south of us, out of Roseburg there in Winston, out of Winston. I told this story here once before, but it was really very impressive. We just got through with church, and we were standing out in our driveway, and this pickup came roaring down the driveway. We have kind of a long driveway, and it sounded like he was driving a Sherman tank. But anyway, when he got down there, he rolled down his window, and here sat this guy all tattooed, and I thought, boy, where's your Harley at, you know? And about that time, you think, he says, say, are you the fellow that passed out that secret terrace?
Okay.
And you wish that Bill was standing there. Or Bill. I keep telling Bill, why do I get all these ugly letters when he's the one that wrote the book? But anyway, he says, I said, yes, I'm guilty. He said, well, in that case, I want a lot more because I have a lot more friends.
Amen.
So we gave him the secret terrace, Enemy Unmasked, Great Controversy.
Amen.
A whole stack of books. And he said, you know what? He said, you're a friend. He said, you know what a friend is? He said, a friend is somebody that shares the gospel with someone else.
Amen.
Wow.
So we're very pleased with what came about on that occasion. I was talking to these people here during the break here, and we had when we did Staten, we passed out the secret terrace and the Enemy Unmasked. But you got to receive the phone call. Now, these are the kind of joys. It's like I tell her, I let my wife answer the phone and I run. See, this lady says, say, did you mass mail that secret terrace? And I said, yes, we did. She said, well, I got news for you. And I thought, oh no, here we go. You know, she says, don't you ever send me just one book again. I said, really? She said, yes. She said, if you're going to send me one book, you send 8 of them because I've got 7 kids. So we gave her, she said, I want some more books. I said, well, we have Enemy Unmasked along with the secret terrace. She said, you got sent 7 of those. They sent 8 of those others. And I said, I have another book that's called Last Day Events. And she said, really? I said, yes. She said, send 8 of those. So we did. She called back and she wanted more books. And I said, well, we have what we call Spirit of Prophecy books. She said, how many of those been sent? I said, there's 5. She said, would you send me 40 of those?
Praise God. Praise God.
People, you can't outgive God.
Amen.
This little church right here, people, could mass mail Portland if you set your mind to it. I'm going to get serious with you. If you don't, these people's blood's going to be on your hands. You need to think about that. Like Bill told you, the only reason we're here is to share the 3 angels' messages. So people, that's what we need to do. We're living in the time of the end. And we don't have much time left. People, when we see what's going on in this world, if you think you have a lot of time left, then you've got your head buried in the sand. You don't. All right? You need to be about God's Word. Thank you, Bill.
Amen.
A short hour.
I think I could listen to Bud for another hour. That was awesome. It really does something to you when somebody calls or writes to you and says your material changed my life.
Amen.
You know? There is nothing like it in this
Right.
world. There's nothing like it. I just thank God I can do it. Thank God we have the privilege to do it. Well, let's go ahead and kneel for prayer.
That's right.
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for the privilege to have been called for such a time as this. We're thankful that you've given us the messages of Revelation 14 to share with all the world. You have blessed us with that privilege. Thank you for making it possible for us to do that. Thank you for the joys and the delights that we have in doing that. We just are very thankful, and we just pray for all the people that have received literature, that have received the brochures. We pray for your Spirit to impress their hearts and minds, to long for more, and to write in to us and get that material. Father, we're just thankful. We're thankful today. As we have this last meeting this afternoon, we pray for the Holy Spirit to be here to impress truth upon our hearts and upon our minds. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Modesty is still the best policy. I'd like to say a couple of things. Obviously, I'm going to say a few more than a couple. This is the first time I've ever given a message like the one this afternoon. And I want to also tell you that as I researched this topic, I was very blessed to learn some things that I did not know. I did not know. And I think it's very, as I studied through this topic of modesty is the best policy, I recognized how very, very important it is. Because and in this particular case this afternoon, we're going to be looking at dress. That's what we're going to look at. And what I found as I studied, I realized how desperately how important it is how we do dress. Because by how we dress, we send a message. We send messages. And it's very important that we're sending the right message. Very important. Very important. You know, a few months back in our little church there in Eustis, on the Sabbath, there was a lady that was visiting, and I want you to understand, this message is not addressed just to women, okay? This is addressed to all of us, because modesty is important for all of us. But in this particular instance, there was a lady that was visiting in our church, and she was wearing a nice long dress that probably came down to her knee or a little bit below her knee. And during the sermon, and the sermon that day was on whether or not women should have a head covering on their head. Okay? A lady in our church there in Florida, she had come to me after a sermon and she said, "You know, Bill, I hear so much about the fact that, women today should be wearing something on their head." And I said, "Well, I will research it out, and I will give a sermon on it." Well, it's very clear from 1 Corinthians chapter 11 that was something that was specifically a situation that existed in Corinth in the first century. But the underlying principle of what Paul was teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 was modesty. Well, this particular woman that day in Eustis came into the church, nice long dress on, had something on her head, but I'm going to be blunt with you. And her dress would come down like this. Okay? And lo and behold, and folk, let's face it, obviously there are times when, for whatever reason, during the course of the day, a woman has to lean over. Isn't that true? Well, this woman did several times that day. And folk, it was embarrassing. And I think you're getting the picture. It was extremely embarrassing. And some of the people in the church came up to me afterwards and said, "You know, in the church services, you were talking about the fact that modesty, that was the whole point of a woman wearing something on their head back in the first century. And that woman argued with you in church over that during the service. She argued with me. And yet she was dressed so immodestly." And folk, it doesn't take somebody with a PhD to recognize the fact that throughout the Bible, you find so many different individuals that fell. They fell into temptation because of immorality. You can go to Samson, you can go to David, you can go to Solomon. Joseph was tempted by that with Potiphar's wife. So folk, there is something to this, and it's very serious. It's Very serious. So, what message do we send? I want to look at two aspects of this today. One is modesty. The other one has to do with health. Modesty and health are connected to proper dress. Proper dress. Now, I found it very interesting as I searched through the Bible, as I was studying this topic of modesty and dress. I was amazed. Well, first off, there is not a lot in the Bible about it. But what is there, very pointed. And I wondered why it primarily had to do with women. This is what 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10 says. In like manner also, women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works. Well, I asked myself the question, why is there more in the Bible about how a woman should dress and not much about how a man should dress?
I agree.
And what I arrived at was this. The Lord knows that men and women are made differently. We're all different. Men and women are very, very different. I think most of you realize that. Women are attracted by touch and emotion from a man. That's what women are attracted to. But that's not the case with men. That's not the case with men. Men are attracted by what they see. That's what they're attracted to. It's not by, somebody being nice to them per se or by being touched. It's by what they see that is an attraction. How important that men and women understand this and dress and behave accordingly. Now, I didn't put behave accordingly, but it should be put in there. That they dress and behave themselves accordingly. Now, Paul said modest apparel. I looked up some of the words in 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10, like modesty, sobriety, shamefacedness. These are what the Strong's Concordance said. They said freedom from conceit or vanity. So if we're wearing something, men and women, that's to try to draw attention to ourselves, trying to say, look at me, that's not the biblical standard. It's to be free from conceit or vanity. Propriety in dress, speech, or conduct. Shamefacedness was bashful, shy, or meek. Propriety is being appropriate, peculiar. Now, I might put this in. I said some folks along the lines of dress are too peculiar. Sometimes we see that. I've seen that. Sometimes, and I think the last time I was here, I spoke on diet. One of the last couple of times on diet. And, folks, there's health reform and there's health deform. Amen. And there's appropriate dress and there's inappropriate dress. So we need to be careful. For example, women wearing dresses that run along the floor. They sweep the floor with their dress. That might be peculiar, but it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. A long dress, that might be appropriate, but if it's got a cut that comes out like this, that's inappropriate. It's that simple. So the Bible's very clear. Modesty, being appropriate, very important. Now, principles for dress. We're going to look at a Bible verse in a moment from Deuteronomy chapter 22. The Bible's very clear. Maintain the male-female distinction. Very important. We'll read it in Deuteronomy 22 momentarily. Consider the effect our clothing has on our influence. I have found it fascinating when I go somewhere, if I am dressed in a suit and a tie, people will treat me differently than if I'm dressed in just a shirt and pants. They will. They will. I'm treated differently by how I dress. What effect does our clothing have on other people? It's very important, especially, and in this case I'm going to point out women here. Ladies, when you dress, you've got to think about, is this appropriate for men to see me dressed like this? You have to. You have to. Because otherwise, you can be sending a wrong message to men. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Make sure our clothing does not offend anyone. Since I'm up here, and I'll just speak. When I see a woman dressed with low cut, or a high skirt, or I see a young man that's got pants that are right down here on his legs with a shirt that's hanging down over his back, I'm offended. I am offended by that. And it's disgusting to me. It's disgusting to me. So we've got to ask ourselves, are we maintaining a male-female distinction by what we're wearing? What is our clothing doing to our influence? And does anything that we're wearing, is it offensive? Is it sending the wrong message to other people? Number 4, be sure our clothing is modest in God's sight. I believe these principles can be used for any article of clothing, whether we're a man or a woman, whether we're young or old. Makes no difference. Makes no difference. We all have an influence. All have an influence. Simplicity and appropriateness. Is the clothing that we are wearing, is it healthy? We're going to look at that in a few minutes. Is it modest? Is it simple and appropriate? From the book Education, page 248, it says, in dress as in all things else, it is our privilege to honor our Creator. He desires our clothing to be not only neat and helpful, but appropriate and becoming. A person's character, see, look at this. A person's character is judged by his style of dress. A refined taste, a cultivated mind will be revealed in the choice of simple and appropriate attire. Chaste simplicity in dress, when united with modesty of demeanor, will go far towards surrounding a young woman with that atmosphere of sacred reserve, which will be to her a shield from 1,000 perils. Not to be an exhibit. From Paul's writings, we found that the terms denote mental attitude, self-control, and attitude that determines all other virtues. Paul recognized that self-control is indispensable for a Christian to be able to dress modestly and decently. The reason is that modest and decent attire derives from the exercise of self-control. Paul pictures the converted Christian woman as one who dresses soberly by restraining her desire to exhibit herself through wearing elaborate hairstyles, gold, pearls, or expensive clothes. 1 Timothy 2:9. Her appearance does not say, look at me, admire me. And this principle applies to men. It applies to all of us. Why do we dress the way we do? Is it to draw attention and attraction to ourselves? We've got to ask ourselves that question, folks. It's very important. But rather, look at how Christ has changed me from the inside out. The apostles' call to dress soberly by shunning elaborate hairstyles, glittering jewelry, and extravagant clothes is particularly relevant today, when fashion reigns supreme and many worship at her altar. Ellen White reminded us that those who worship at fashion's altar have but little force of character. They live for no greater purpose, and their lives accomplish no worthy end. We meet everywhere women whose mind and heart are absorbed in their love of dress and display. The soul of womanhood is dwarfed and belittled, and her thoughts are centered upon her poor, despicable self. And again, folk, Ellen White applied that primarily to women. I think in a general sense it has application to all of us. It has application to all of us. Now, interesting statement and an interesting picture. Deuteronomy 22, verse 5. Here's another biblical principle of dress. It says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God." Deuteronomy 22, 5. Now, folk, if we saw men walking around dressed like that, what would we say? We'd say, he's weird, wouldn't we? He's weird. Because he's wearing something that pertains to a woman. Right?
Well, we don't say that when a woman puts on, man's pants.
But we should, Chris.
And you know what I was told? You want to know how Satan is so devious? I was told, well, fashion designed men's pants to fit a woman now.
Chris, the biblical principle is right here.
I
It
know.
could not be plainer. Could not be plainer. And I'll read it again. The woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man.
I know.
Neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. There's a man dressed in a woman's garment. That's inappropriate. All of us would agree. And the contrary is true. It doesn't matter how somebody plays it, finagles it, or tries to fix it. Women should not wear man's clothes. It's that simple. Yes, you do.
Here, somebody was saying regarding that, how you gonna apply that to Ireland, or Irish, when men are dressed like women and women like men? It's custom, yeah. Yeah. Because the guy said, this is not referring especially what type of dress, if you go in Irish, you have to wear skirts or something. If you go to, so that was a...
Eugene, what I would say is Deuteronomy 22:5 says, a woman should not wear that which pertains to a man. And a man should not wear what a woman wears. So, Eugene, biblical principles go across culture. See, I've heard that argument, Eugene, when the rock music was coming into Seventh-day Adventist churches under the Celebration movement. And Seventh-day Adventists would say, oh, that music is fine because that's the music they hear in the islands. That comes from the Afro-American culture. It's okay. Eugene, it's not okay. Good music, sound music, appropriate music, Eugene, is the same in every culture. Amen. And women's clothing and men's clothing in every culture is the same.
Yeah, amen.
You say, men should wear what is appropriate for men. Women should wear what's appropriate for women. And that's the biblical principle, and it cuts across every culture. Now, how do you know which is which? How do you know? If I go to an airport and I need to use the bathroom, and I see this sign. Well, how do I know which one I'm supposed to go into? Well, I know what a man's supposed to wear, and I know what a woman's supposed to wear. So I obviously go into this bathroom. And the Bible is so clear, a man is to dress like that, a woman dresses like that. And you have to maintain the male-female distinction. When a woman's wearing, and I put in tight, but I think you could just say pants in general. Now ladies, you may not understand this, but I'm telling you the truth. And I think if I had a show of hands from the men in this room, I think 100% of them would agree with me. When a woman's wearing pants, they are as a magnet to men's eyes, attracting men to the lower part of her body. That's what happens. That's what happens. And so what is the message? What is the message the woman is sending? Now, a woman could very well, you could be saying to yourself, but I'm not trying to send that message when I put pants on. You may not be, ladies. But the fact is, whether you mean to or not, that's the message that's being sent. That's the message that's being sent. And it is as a magnet to a man's eyes if a woman has on pants, tight pants especially. And the man, this is not where men's eyes should be, nor where women want men to be attracted. You look at all the broken homes, all the devastated lives in this country and around the world. You know why it happens that way? For the most part, most families today, most relationships today, start off built around sex. That's what happens. I was talking with a gentleman just the other day in an eastern state. And he flat out told me, he said, Bill, he said, I had no connection with this woman. I didn't know this lady. I was not even her friend. And he said, but I was attracted to her physically. I got her pregnant, and I felt I needed to marry her. That was the basis of their relationship. It was the bedroom. It was sex. And what happened? I am sure, I am absolutely sure. I didn't ask him. Maybe I should have. I should have asked. When you first started recognizing this young lady, was she wearing pants? Because, folks, it's like a magnet. Ladies, it's like a magnet to a man's eyes. And it sends a message. It sends a message for men to look at you there. And that's not where you want them to be looking. Women want men to be attracted to see their eyes, to their face, not to their body. Any tight-fitting clothes are a magnet. They're a magnet. So, and this applies to women, okay? Women, modesty. Modesty, not tight-fitting things. Because you want men to look here. That's where you want men's eyes. Address and health. I found this very, very interesting. For men too. Gentlemen, are you listening? This is crucial, folks. I was shocked when I learned this. It's impossible to have health. Now this was done by a doctor. Okay? These are not my words. This is a doctor who deals in health. He said it's impossible to have health when the extremities, the hands, the arms, the feet, and the legs are habitually cold. Did you hear that? If your arms are cold, if your legs are cold, if your hands are cold, habitually. If there is too little blood in them, there will be too much in other portions of the body. shunting of the blood from one area of the body to another, perfect health. We try to find perfect health in studies, optimal diet, many things. But here it says perfect health requires perfect circulation. This cannot be had while 3 or 4 times as much clothing is worn upon the body where the vital organs are situated as upon the feet and limbs. Perfect circulation of the blood equals perfect health. So our goal is maintaining our proper blood flow. And then he says, I want to take a look at a short description of our anatomy. Many may be familiar with this, but some insight may be helpful too. Our arteries are the vessels that take blood from the heart. They carry the warmest blood to all parts of your body, including the extremities. They tend to be high-pressure vessels. They have to contain more pressure and are actually built differently. They have a muscle in the wall that can open and close to allow blood to flow. They can also cause a shunting effect, meaning that one vessel can shut off and let the other place get the blood for a while, and they can go back and forth and alternate. They also tend to run deep in the tissue. If you've ever had an arterial blood sample drawn, they take it from a deeper vessel than a usual blood sample. If you cut yourself seriously and you see the blood squirting out under pressure, you know you've cut an artery and not a vein.
Bill,
Yes.
up in Alaska, the military actually did an extensive study in regards to the military men wearing something on their head of their heat loss, and they found that the men without, something over their head lost, I don't remember what the percent was of heat, of body heat out through their head, but the ones who had the cap on, retained that body heat.
Yeah, ask those people who have no hair.
Veins, they return the blood to the heart. They are low pressure. They tend to run surface. When you look at your arm and put a tourniquet on your arm or a blood pressure cuff, you see these vessels start to bulge. Those are veins. They run on the surface. They tend to surround tissue like the arm. They tend to maintain a heat barrier so the arteries don't constrict interior-wise. We have one artery for every 2 veins, one going out for every 2 coming back. This is a low-pressure system which isn't moving as much volume. In the extremities, like your arms or your legs, when you find large vessels, you should expect increased function, meaning a muscle can lift weights because of the blood supply through it. Or you should expect increased warmth is needed in the extremity it flows through. Why do we lose our elasticity? Why do we get more stiff as we get older? Why do those joints act up on us? The limbs and feet have large veins to receive a large amount of blood that warmth, nutrition, elasticity, and strength may be imparted to them. But when the blood is chilled from these extremities, their blood vessels contract, which makes the circulation of the necessary amount of blood in them still more difficult. A good circulation preserves the blood pure and secures health.
Bill, it leaves the heart unprotected. And they're not covered properly.
Okay, when what's not covered, Cecil? Your
The
extremities?
extremities are not covered properly, it leaves the heart unguarded.
Okay? And when the heart is unguarded, Cecil, what I got from this doctor, and I think he's going to say it, if we are allowing our extremities to be cold, that actually is one cause of heart disease and heart attacks.
That's right.
Because when our extremities are cold, it's putting on our heart greater pressure. I was amazed at that. A bad circulation leaves the blood to become impure and induces congestion of the brain and lungs and causes diseases of the head, the heart, the liver, and the lungs. Did you see that? So if we're not dressed where our extremities are covered, and our blood does not circulate well, Ellen White says it could lead to problems with our brain, our lungs, and cause diseases of the head, the heart, the liver, and the lungs. Now the doctor went on, he said, that's my field, diseases of the heart, liver, and lungs. Amazing. So amazing, people have difficulty understanding it. When we have cold extremities, that means the body has been defeated. When your extremity is cold, it means the body isn't capable of keeping it warm anymore. It's not just a matter of being cold. It means the body has done everything it can to keep you warm, and it's been beaten. You might say, I can touch my arm and it feels nice and warm. I'm thankful because your body is still ahead of the battle. By the time it gets cold, you've lost the battle. So the connection between dress and health is very, very important. The doctor went on, let's take a look at how God works and what our part is. Back to our anatomy lesson. The vessels of our arms and legs are arranged for our protection. God designed that we run our arteries in places that are protected. Your major arteries don't run close to your elbow. They run on the inside of your arm. Notice your arteries don't run over your kneecap. They run on the back of your leg. Why did God do this? He knew that we were going to bump ourselves up a fair amount. God has handled the anatomy properly. He takes care of the vessels. And then from Ellen White it says, our Creator has formed the limbs with large veins and vessels to contain a large proportion of blood, that the limbs may be sufficiently nourished and proportionately warm with other portions of the body. But fashion robs the limbs of coverings, and the life current is chilled from its natural channel and thrown back upon its internal organs. God has done His part. The question is, are we willing to do ours? God has made the vessels large. He's protected them from trauma. How do we maintain proper circulation? By what we wear. It's by our clothing, men and women. It's all of us. God can't do any more for you than what He has done with your anatomy. Now it's up to us to deal with it. When we try and control the temperature of the body, we have the vessels there. They're large enough to do that, so now it's up to us. Proper temperature control is through proper clothing. How we clothe our bodies to maintain this proper circulation? Special attention, this is from Child Guidance 426, special attention should be given to the extremities. We need to clothe ourselves properly. That they may be as thoroughly clothed as the chest and the region over the heart, where is the greatest amount of heat. If these parts are not so warm as the body, the circulation is not equalized. When the extremities, which are remote from the vital organs, are not properly clad, the blood is driven to the head, causing headache or nosebleed, or there is a sense of fullness about the chest, producing cough or palpitation of the heart, on account of too much blood in that locality. Or the stomach has too much blood, causing indigestion. So by improper dress, we can damage our heart, our lungs, our internal organs that can cause disease and illness by not being dressed appropriately. Ellen White said this again. She said the limbs, which should have even more covering than any portion of the body, are often not suitably protected, while over the vital organs, where there is naturally more warmth than in other portions of the body, there's an undue proportion of covering. The heavy draperies often worn upon the back induce heat and congestion in the sensitive organs which lie beneath. This fashionable attire is one of the greatest causes of disease among women. Perfect health depends upon perfect circulation. And Ellen White talking about how we attain perfect circulation of the blood. True dress reform regulates every article of dress worn upon the person. In order to equalize the circulation of the blood, the clothing should be equally distributed upon the person, that equal warmth may be preserved in all parts of the body.
Are you talking about when it's like cold, you know, and you're
It's cold.
exposing yourself and then your limbs get cold and you feel that? Or are we talking about total generality in every type of situation?
You know, Gina, as I read on, because I asked the same question as I read this doctor, as I was reading this doctor's material, and I believe, let me see, he says, let's see if it's here. Gina, he refers to the nomads of Africa who are living in the midst of the desert. And he says, how do they, keep good circulation of their bodies, good blood flow? And he says, do they do it by taking clothes off?
No.
Or do they do it by...
See, we're living in a different place where our clothing isn't the linens and things that they wear down there, which are breathable. Here, like, I layer, when I dress, because when you're exerting, either working outdoors or hiking or something like that, and it gets warm or it gets cool, you can take layers off as it gets hot, or put it on as you cool down. But, not a lot of our clothing is breathable, like down there in Arabia or whatever, Saudi Arabia down there, because they definitely do have a different material. I'm not trying to nitpick or, bring culture into this, but, we have to be practical in what we can have access to.
Gina, can I share something with you?
Sure.
When we lived in Arizona and we had no air conditioning in the car, it was hot, 120, okay?
Oh.
And I'm actually knitting on an Afghan, and I'm thinking, I shouldn't even be doing this in the car in summer. Well, even in June, it's 120 down there hot. But the coolest place I was where I was covered. I learned living in Arizona, I just stay covered, head to toe. It's much cooler because I have a natural air conditioning that works that way, but I don't wear polyester clothes. That kills your electrical system anyway. So I don't wear polyester. They can't breathe in their heart. It shut off your electricity in your system. But if you wear cotton and you breathe in that cotton, you're not that uncomfortable because it works as a natural air conditioning. And I was much cooler than where the sun hit me, where it hit my skin. Way hotter that way. That was my personal experience living in the heat. We did it for 10 years, so.
Gina, I'll tell you, of course, I live in Florida, and
That's hot.
I learned this, Gina, this week. Okay, about this problem. I mean, I knew about perfect health is involved in perfect circulation. I had read that. But Gina, I'd wear short shirts, and I'd wear, shorts in the heat of Florida. I mean, it's humid, it's hot, it's miserable. It's going to be very interesting come next year. I'm going to put this guy to the test. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to see it.
The thing I find, if we're in an area that, as it gradually warms up or whatever, your body does climate. And I know that because in the summertime I can handle warmer temperatures. In the wintertime I can handle colder and still feel comfortable, So, God has
absolutely.
And I've kind of struggled with this, and I don't want to take up your time or anything like that, but
No, I appreciate your comment.
because I find that in a dress, I'm cold. It's,
Why?
for me, I'm cold. My feet are cold, my legs are cold. You know, it changes how my body, blood works or something. But, and I don't know if that's because my activity level is different, you know, or whatever, but, you know, and so I'm trying to balance these things, you know, and modesty to me is very, very important. And in many cases, and I don't know, maybe I'm just out of line or whatever, you know, being in a dress is actually more immodest than pants because of different activities that you do. You know, when we go hiking and stuff, and the wind comes up, you know, it's you're on a boat or you're, you know, doing things
How
like
do the women
this.
how do the women cross the
I don't know. I have a lot of respect for the pioneers. I mean, it's just, but
I
it's
go out
like,
and get
you know,
wood, I go out and get wood out of dresses.
they definitely had a different type of clothing that they had because they wore things underneath. But there's, you know, even at that, you start layering because you start layering your trunk, you know, and that can change the flow of blood. So there's a lot of factors that play in this, and I'm not trying in any way to belittle what you're saying or argue with you at all. It's just these are things that I've, you know, come across, and I'm trying to work my way through this, you know, raising children and working with young people. It's dress is definitely a big issue. And you gotta have an answer for what you say, you know, because they're gonna throw it right back at you and say, what? You know, so.
I can't imagine who'd do that.
Well, Bill, I have a question for you.
Ma'am,
You know, you have brought out and you have respectfully tried to reference it to both men and women. However, you know, a lot of the statements are directed towards women. And we hear, you know, I'm like Gina in regards to trying to balance things out. And I'm not trying to pick on you men, but I am, I guess. Because, you know, the women constantly hear that we should wear cotton and that we should wear linen, we should wear clothing that breathes. And yet, have you ever seen a suit for a man made in cotton?
Our guys usually wear wool summer and winter at our house.
Wool is one of the best insulating fabrics there is.
You get the lightweight all around.
But what I'm just saying is, you know, you want to be modest in apparel, you want to be respectful, especially if you're going to come to church, because that's where we're coming to meet our Creator. And so, I understand what they're saying about the wool. However, when you go to the store, you will see what majority of the suits for men are made of, and they're not wool.
Chris, I'll tell you.
See,
Chris,
so there's a balance here that is a struggle trying to go through.
Chris, I can appreciate very much what you're saying. Gina, I can appreciate very much what you're saying. As I stated at the outset, this is the first time I've given a talk on modesty and dress. And a lot of this material, very honestly, is new to me. And so your points, very well taken. Very well taken. And obviously, you ladies have you know, you've analyzed it, you've struggled with it, you've had to have answers. Now, Laura, I'm not looking at you for any reason. It just happened that way. Your points are well taken. That's fair. That's fair. Yes, ma'am.
There's another one. There's some research you could do. I have a book at my house I read years ago that really brought a lot of conviction to me. The American costume. The women here may have remembered reading about that in the Spirit of Prophecy. How one point said the American costume came in. And none of us really knew what the American costume was. You may remember about in the late 60s when the pantsuits for women came in. band hit the bottom of the jacket, and then you wore pants. You look at the history of the American costume, and that's exactly what it looked like, only a fuller jacket. And there were Adventist doctor women who were wearing it in Ellen White's days.
Yeah.
And she said, if you think you're going to wear those, you have left the 30th message. Because it's dressing too much like a man.
Where's that found? Where's the reference?
I believe it's 5 testimonies. I can email it to you.
Okay, please do.
It's testimony. And then there's pictures of
Well, they
that.
should have a picture of.
And there are pictures of 3 doctor women in that book wearing that costume. And she said, if you even think you're going to be wearing those, or consider it, you've left the previous messages, because that's against Deuteronomy 22. It's dressing too much like a woman.
Well, she also had the other example too.
Yeah, she did. In fact, their swimsuits look a lot like the women, like we wear to church today, you know, for dresses. So, you know, it is, but that's one thing that really convicted me when I saw the comparison of the pantsuits and the American costume. She said that was Satan's dress reform.
Get that, Where you said that was in Fifth Testimony?
I believe so. I can send you the, I'll send you the,
Ann, please.
You know, silk is a wonderful fabric. It's warm in the winter and it's cool in the summer. And, you know, we have to stop and think what the Bible says. How would a godly woman dress? How would a godly Christian man dress? And you can pretty much, and if you pray about it, God will give it to you. So you can pretty much figure out on your own. We don't need to excuse what we do or where we go or how we live or where we live or whatever. God takes all of that into account.
Good point, Ann. Good point.
Bill, when we were sending containers to Russia, we had Russian people helping us. And we said something about sending pants over there for the women. And nobody was going to send any pants over there. And this Russian lady said, you send all the women's pants you can possibly get your hands on. And we looked at somebody strange and said, all Russian women wear pants under their dress.
Really?
Yeah.
Under their dress?
look how cold it is. Keeps their legs warm.
Oh.
Yeah, like, look, they're warm.
She said, you won't find one of them without a dress, but they have pants on them.
Yeah.
And that's not only modesty, but it's also healthy. Interesting. Appreciate that.
Eskimos do the same thing.
What's that?
Eskimos do the same thing. You know, the women wear the, you know,
They're long fur dresses.
the dresses down below their knee, and then they have like a pant underneath it. And of course, their mukluks usually come up to their dress, but they have those, they're like a loose pant. I wore them for years. That's what I wore because it's warm.
Well, that's very practical. Very practical.
I just don't
that's
think God is unreasonable.
No.
No.
It just, sometimes it takes a big shift. I mean, it took a big shift in my mind, huge. You know, I had a whole closet full of pants. But God really hit me between the eyes on a few things, and I said, well, it's time to change. You know, pray, I can do all things through Christ, which gives me strength.
Just put your dress over them and it'll look nice.
You know, you can adjust.
Somebody else over here have a, Gordon, please.
In Ellen White's day, and for many years thereafter, women wore cotton stocking for warmth.
Still do what I find.
Yeah, but they get wet, they get cold.
Cotton skulls, cotton long socks are amazingly warm.
All right. First testimonies, 458, 459. Christians should not take pains to make themselves a gazing stock by dressing differently from the world, but if, when following out their convictions of duty in respect to dressing modestly and healthfully, they find themselves out of fashion, they should not change their dress in order to be like the world. They should manifest a noble independence, moral courage to be right, if all the world differ from them. The world introduced a modest, convenient, healthful mode of dress, which is in accordance with the Bible. It will not change our relation to God or to the world to adopt such a style. Christians should follow Christ and make their dress conform to God's Word. They should shun extremes. And very balanced. Very balanced. Some took the attitude that the wearing of the reformed dress must be obligatory. But Mrs. White wrote Testimonies, Volume 4, 637. I did not make the dress a test question. Still others with misguided zeal placed it entirely out of its setting. This is what Ellen White said. The extremist reform seemed to constitute the sum and substance of their religion. It was the theme of conversation, the burden of their hearts. Their minds were thus diverted from God and the truth. To those who put it on reluctantly from a sense of duty, it became a grievous yoke. Still others, who were apparently the most zealous reformers, manifested a sad lack of order and neatness in their dress. I find it interesting in this statement that Ellen White deals with two extremes. It's not to become the religion. It's not to become everything that we talk about. Is it important? Yes, it's important. Is it everything? No. No. They sought to control others' conscience by their own. If they wore it, others must put it on. They forgot that none were to be compelled to wear the reformed dress. Again, a beautiful balance. Did Ellen White understand how people should dress? Did she understand about perfect circulation? Absolutely she did.
What's the reformed dress?
Yeah. Whatever that is.
Well, I have pictures of that too in that one book I had, and actually it was a long enough
I
dress.
know, there's pictures.
There's a book out there that the Shorters wrote, and I don't know if any of you have read it, Gwen and Rick Shorter. They were actually worked on Broadway before they became Adventist Christians or black people. It's called Thy Nakedness, Lord, What Shall I Wear? You can still buy it. You can find it probably on the internet as well as other places. Loaded with pictures, everything from boots to dresses to swimsuits to quotations like crazy. And it covers everything from letters that men wrote to Ann Landers about women's
But
dress
I'm talking about, she says,
to articles.
wearing of the reformed dress.
And
Oh, I
it
have
shows
the
you in there the
reformed
reformed dress. It's really hard to explain it. It was a dress that came, well, like she said, the women in her day, then they decided, well, she said you need to wear your dresses to the top of your boots. So they started wearing men's gaiter boots that came up to their knees, and she said, you know better than that. They don't belong wearing short dresses. Your boots were normally like
They were
mid-ankle or about like mine, but not, not really tall.
Not dragging the grass.
And so then the dresses were about probably 8 to 9 inches from the ground. 8 inches, 9 inches was her work dress. 8 inches was the normal dress. And then it had pants that were underneath, but you couldn't really see the pants because they were like covered almost with the boots. Because she said you weren't supposed to be showing the pants necessarily, but they were pants that would keep you warm. And that's basically what it was for warmth, circulation.
Exactly.
And, the women didn't like it. And so she said, well, God took that away, now you're on your own to figure out a pattern, is what she told them. But if you're interested in finding the book, the Shorters, it's still out there, and it's an amazing book, and it's loaded with, it has things from thy nakedness, Lord, what shall I wear?
I'm reading Gwen Shorter.
Gwen and Rick Shorter. And the thing is, like, it tells a story in Japan, I believe it was, where the women all wore their long kimonos and so forth, and they had a fire in the top of some, I don't remember if it was like an entertainment building wherever they were, and the women wouldn't jump out because of the immodesty, and they burned rather than jump out the windows because they were so modest. And it was things of, how people have lived to protect their modesty and even died protecting their modesty. And it just brought a lot of things to my mind I had never understood about the unisex dress and, Satan being the father of fashion. How homosexuality and lesbianism has become huge when unisex dress came out.
Yeah, amen.
Where everybody dresses the same.
Yeah, it made it much easier for all these perversions. So, Satan's the father of fashion. He's made it really easy but yet, the world at this point has fashions that match pretty much what the Lord would like us to wear. You can do anything in today's world and nobody makes fun of you. Can you see that?
Let's see.
You make fun of me.
Some were greatly troubled because I did not make the dress a test question. Still others because I advised those who had unbelieving husbands or children not to adopt the reformed dress, as it might lead to unhappiness that would counteract all the good to be derived from its use. For years I carried the burden of this work and labored to establish uniformity of dress among our sisters.
Do you have an example going back a ways when you was reading about Modesty, you read something about hair styles. Did you find any reference to what is constituted as a hairstyle that was incorrect?
The only quote I remember, Chris, was 1 Timothy 2, where it talked about embroidery
Mm-hmm.
in the hair. Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in like manner, women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair.
So what is your understanding of braided hair is?
You know,
Chris, that was one word I did not look up.
you know that
I did not, I don't know. Can somebody else help us, Ann, or,
it takes, in some people it takes a lot of money to have their hair braided. And it's not only the black people, it's actually people, and they spend hours and hours and pay lots of money to have this hairstyle, you know, the braided, yeah. And so, imagine the money, I'm thinking that, and the tension that brings, because people say, oh, you know, oh, you have, that hairstyle looks so good on you, how long did it take? And, you know, it brings interest also. Oh, I want to do mine like that. And say, how much did it cost you? Because you go to other parts of the world and the braiding is, you know, like Africa and stuff, that is the culture. And it's because of the hair, they need to braid. But it doesn't mean that, you know, they're out of line. There's other people that just do it because they want that hairstyle, but it does cost a lot of money and time. So it could be, you know, some of that.
They do put beads and
Yeah.
stuff in there.
And the beads and, yeah, the whole.
good point. All right, Ann?
And when it talks about in the Bible, not braiding your hair and putting all this gold and silver and braids and strings in your hair, in the Bible times, there's a sermon given on it. In Bible times, prostitutes wore their hair that way.
They
And
were
so
how?
that would give reference, if you wear your hair that way in Bible times, you were a prostitute. So
How
it was
did they
easy to
wear it,
recognize.
Ann? They had stuff
They
in
braid
it?
beads and gold strings into their hair and all these fancy things into their hair.
Oh,
And,
like
and
Indian
like
things.
she said also, it could be money. We shouldn't spend hours and hours on our hair, decorating our bodies, and all this money that it costs to do that with, when we could take that money and give it to the poor or help, you know, ministries of whatever it was you were choosing. But it did say that in the Bible times, and we think today, it's not just braiding the hair. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, especially if you're working outside or whatever and you choose to have long hair.
There's a difference between just a braid though and all
There's
this other
a
stuff.
difference between just braiding your hair or fixing it neat and tidy, rather than braiding all these old things and having people look at you like a prostitute. You know, today we look at all these leopard prints and high boots and short dresses, and we think, well, it looks like a prostitute. That's the way they dress. That's the reference that it gives. That's what we see when you look at a person, a woman dressed like that. You know.
Appreciate the point, Ann. That's a good point. Your name, ma'am? Vicki, go ahead.
I get all this. There's appropriate dress for church, there's appropriate dress for going out in the world. What if you're married and you want to be attractive to your husband? Because he's out in the world all day looking at all these hot girls running around with their tight jeans and their low-cut blouses and their makeup and their foo-foo and their nails out to here, and they look fabulous, you know, to a man's eye, because that's what a man is attracted to. Then he comes home to me and I'm all dumpy and frumpy in my bathrobe, being all humble and, you know. I mean, is it okay to want to be attractive for your husband in your home?
Vicki, how would you answer that?
Well,
In your home.
in my home, yeah, you know, I mean, he sees everything all day long, and then he comes home to me, you know, all looking all humiliated, humble there, and all that, and I'm new to this, and I just feel like, for my husband, I want to be attracted to him. He's attracted, he sees all kinds of attractive things out there in the world all day long. He comes home to me, and I want to be attractive as well, but it's in my home, and it's husband and wife, and I think it's okay. That's if you want my answer. I think it's okay.
Well, Vicki, very frankly, I'd agree with you.
Yay! Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're in the home, Vicki.
I'm in my home, exactly.
And you're not out there trying to flaunt yourself
No,
to be a gazing stock
no.
to some other man. you want to be satisfying and a blessing to your husband. And within your home, Vicki, I'd say absolutely.
Do what you
There's
want
one
to.
quotation I found very interesting. She said, I mean, the men mostly find women very attractive if they're simple and plain and clean. You know, she just makes this comment that you cannot be an influence spiritually to your husband or your children if you look like a bird flew over and dropped her clothes on you and you look like a scarecrow. It's a pretty interesting comment. But she said, be neat and clean. That's what the Lord expects us to be. But you know, there's been more than one time, and this is not for bragging, it's humiliating. It's very humbling to me and surprising as I walked through a Walmart store and a man with a woman beside him would stop and say, I really like your dress like a woman. It's so refreshing. And I'm saying, what is this man going to face when he gets out to the car with his wife? You know, but they notice a woman that looks like a woman and, you know, not flaunting anything, just trying to be a humble, dressed in a denim skirt and whatever dress, but trying to not look like the world. And men appreciate a modest, clean woman, whether you're a wife or otherwise. And it is refreshing. It's different in the world.
Absolutely, Mom. I felt Vicki when she was talking about in her home.
It's frustrating.
She wants to be attractive. She wants to be appealing to her husband. I didn't get the feeling that she was going to dress up with, you know, gold and all kinds of stuff in her hair. She just wanted to be attractive. And so, sure. But for her
But this is what
husband,
otherwise there's too many women that take it to the extreme. If they can just at home,
Oh,
so I
sure.
can go around in my bathrobe or frumpy and not look right, and that doesn't, you know, that doesn't help how you feel about yourself, let alone your family.
sure,
So again, it's this balance that the Lord wants.
balance is crucial. Balance is crucial. No one precise style has been given me as the exact rule to guide all in their dress. This is from a quote it's from Ellen White's manuscript 167, 1897. It's quoted in the Story of Our Health message by D.E. Robinson. He says, should our sisters think they must adopt a uniform style of dress, controversy would arise. Those whose minds should be wholly given to the work of the third angel's message would spend their time making aggressive warfare in the outward dress to the neglect of that inward piety, the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit which is in the sight of God of great price. The dress question is not to be our present truth. To create an issue on this point now would please the enemy. He would be delighted to have minds diverted from any subject by which he might create division of sentiment and lead our people into controversy. I beg of our people to walk carefully and circumspectly before God. Let our sisters dress plainly as many do, having the dress of good, durable material, appropriate for this age. Let not the dress question fill the mind. Our sisters should dress with simplicity. They should clothe themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. Again, a beautiful balance between modesty of dress, but being sure that that does not become the central issue, but rather make sure that we have inward piety.
Amen.
Inward piety, the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit which is in the sight of God of great price. So again, there's a balance, a beautiful balance there. The working of the Spirit of God will show a change outwardly. Those who venture to disobey the plainest statements of inspiration will not heed any human efforts made to induce them to wear a plain, neat, unadorned, proper dress that will not in any way make them odd or singular. They will continue to expose themselves by hanging out their colors to the world. Therefore I say to my sisters, enter into no controversy in regard to outward apparel, but be sure you have the inward adorning of a meek and quiet spirit. Let all who accept the truth show their true colors. We are a spectacle to the world, to angels, and to men. False prudence, mock modesty may be shown by the outward apparel, while the heart is in great need of the inward adorning. Stay ever committed to the right. So again, the balance, What message are we giving? Are we confessing Christ in our daily life? This is Review and Herald, May 19, 1892. Do we confess Him in our dress, adorning ourselves with plain and modest apparel? Is our adorning that of the meek and quiet spirit which is of so great price in the sight of God? Are we seeking to advance the cause of the Master? Is the line of demarcation between you and the world distinct? Or are you seeking to follow the fashions of this degenerate age? Is there no difference between you and the world then? Does the same Spirit work in you that works in the children of disobedience? If we're Christians, we shall follow Christ, even though the path in which we're to walk cuts right across our natural inclinations. I hope from what I studied and what I shared with you this afternoon, the points that stood out to me for men and women: modesty, simplicity, and health. And never to make those the ultimate, but to be sure that we are allowing God to work in our hearts a meek and a quiet spirit. And that's the beautiful balance that I saw from what I've studied so far on the message of grace. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and have prayer. If anybody would like to stay and have further discussion or ask questions or make comments, certainly can. Let's kneel for prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you. Thank you for your word and for the gift of prophecy. Thank you for the principles that are laid out for us. Thank you for the spirit in which they're laid out. Thank you for the beautiful balance. Father, I just pray that you guide each one of us in our lives to analyze what we do, how we dress, and the message that we're communicating to other people. Please guide us, Lord, to represent you as our Creator and as our Redeemer. In Jesus' name I pray.